lot of criticism from Denmark, a lot of attacks at the Trump administration, at the president, at me. If a missile was fired from an enemy country or an enemy submarine into the United States, it is the people here before us who would give notice to our brave men and women further south in the United States. Our message to Denmark is very simple. You have not done a good job by the people of Greenland. Our argument really is with the leadership of Denmark, which is underinvested in Greenland and underinvested in its security architecture. That simply must change. I think that you'd be a lot better coming under the United States security umbrella than you have been under Denmark's security umbrella. What is the alternative? To give up the North Atlantic? To give up the Arctic? To China? To Russia? Greenlanders are going to choose through self-determination to become independent of Denmark, and then we're going to have conversations with the people of Greenland from there. If a missile was fired from an enemy country or an enemy submarine into the United States, it is the people here before us who would give notice to our brave men and women further south in the United States to let people know what was coming and, God willing, to try to shoot it down and prepare for it. That's one of the things that we do at installations like this. We know that Russia and China and other nations are taking an extraordinary interest in Arctic passageways and Arctic naval routes, and indeed in the minerals of the Arctic territories. We need to ensure that America is leading in the Arctic, because we know that if America doesn't, other nations will fill the gap where we fall behind. So what you guys do is so critically important. I think a lot of Americans, certainly I, didn't realize it fully until President Trump started talking about the importance of our Arctic mission, about building upon it and ensuring that America can lead in the Arctic for the next generation. And now I want to talk about, of course, the interaction and what Denmark, I think, has done, and sometimes in partnership with us, but let's be honest, what Denmark over the last 20 years has failed to do in some cases, because we know that unfortunately this place, this base, the surrounding area is less secure than it was 30, 40 years ago, because some of our allies haven't kept up. As China and Russia have taken greater and greater interest in Greenland and this base and the activities of the brave Americans right here, we know that too often our allies in Europe have not kept pace. They haven't kept pace with military spending, and Denmark has not kept pace in devoting the resources necessary to keep this base, to keep our troops, and in my view, to keep the people of Greenland safe from a lot of very aggressive incursions from Russia, from China, and from other nations. Now, President Trump, as he says all the time, and as a lot of people recognize, is a president of peace. We want to have good relationships with everybody. That includes, even to the extent possible, the Chinese and the Russians. But part of having good relations is showing your strength when you have to. And unfortunately, the story of Greenland over the past 20 years when it comes to security is that we've underinvested in the infrastructure, we've underinvested in the security architecture, and we've underinvested in the brave men and women who are doing a very hard job, as Mike said, to keep all of us safe. That has to change. Now, when I pointed out a couple of weeks ago that in some ways, with all due respect to our Danish allies, they had not kept pace, there was a lot of criticism from Denmark, a lot of attacks at the Trump administration, at the president, at me, at others in our administration for saying the obvious, which is that Denmark hasn't done a good job at keeping Greenland safe. And one of the things I heard was, well, what about the many Danes who lost their lives in the War on Terror fighting alongside the United States? Well, look, we obviously honor the sacrifice of our Danish friends in the War on Terror 20 years ago, just as, for example, the French honor the sacrifice of Americans in Normandy 80 years ago. But recognizing that there are important security partnerships in the past does not mean that we can't have disagreements with allies in the present about how to preserve our shared security for the future. And that's what this is about. There is no amount of bullying, no amount of obfuscating, no amount of confusing the issue. Our message to Denmark is very simple. You have not done a good job by the people of Greenland. You have underinvested in the people of Greenland, and you have underinvested in the security architecture of this incredible, beautiful landmass filled with incredible people. That has to change. And because it hasn't changed, this is why President Trump's policy in Greenland is what it is. It's consistent with the first Trump administration, where you saw significant investments in Arctic security, and it will continue over the next 4 years under President Trump's leadership. We respect, as the president said in his State of the Union address, we respect the self-determination of Greenlanders, excuse me. We believe in the self-determination of the population of the people of Greenland. And our argument is very simple. It is not with the people of Greenland, who I think are incredible and have an incredible opportunity here. Our argument really is with the leadership of Denmark, which is underinvested in Greenland and underinvested in its security architecture. That simply must change. If Greenland doesn't have self-determination, if the people of Greenland have their future controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, it's not going to make their lives better off, and most importantly, it's going to make American and world national security, world security, much, much weaker. We can't just ignore the president's desires, but most importantly, we can't ignore what I said earlier, which is the Russian and Chinese encroachment in Greenland. We have to do more. And what the president said in his State of the Union address, and he was very clear about this, is we respect the self-determination of the people of Greenland. But my argument again to them is I think that you'd be a lot better coming under the United States security umbrella than you have been under Denmark's security umbrella. Because what Denmark's security umbrella has meant is effectively they've passed it all off to brave Americans and hope that we would pick up the tab. We're simply saying to the people of Greenland, when the president says we've got to have Greenland, he's saying this island is not safe. A lot of people are interested in it. A lot of people are making a play. We know that America cares about the security of this island for the sake of the people of Greenland, but also for the sake of the national security interests of the United States of America. We know that the Chinese are very, very interested in this island. We've seen some of the economic pressures that they've tried to place on Greenland. We know that they're increasingly engaging in military training and military interest. Certainly, they've started to describe themselves as a near Arctic power. And I think part of that is justifying taking a further interest in Greenland and some of the surrounding territories. So we've seen very strong evidence that both the Chinese and the Russians are interested in Greenland. The president said clearly he doesn't think that military force is going to be necessary, but he absolutely believes that Greenland is an important part of the security, not just of the United States, but of the world, and of course the people of Greenland too. It's very simple. I think the president's been very consistent here. From his State of the Union, from his inaugural address, and every public statement that he's made, this territory, Greenland, really matters for the security of the United States. It's extremely vulnerable right now. And if the people of Greenland were willing to partner with the United States, and I think that they ultimately will partner with the United States, we could make them much more secure. We could do a lot more protection, and I think they'd fare a lot better economically as well. This has to happen. And the reason it has to happen, I hate to say it, is because our friends in Denmark have not done their job in keeping this area safe. They just haven't done it. It's very simple. For all of our friends in the American media who attack the administration for pointing out the obvious, what is the alternative? To give up the North Atlantic? To give up the Arctic? To China, to Russia, and to other regimes that don't have the best interest of the American people at heart? We have no other option. We need to take a significant position in Greenland to keep the people here safe, but to keep our own country safe too. Well, what the president has said, is that we need to have more of a position in Greenland. We need it, again, for the safety of the American people. And what we think is going to happen is that the Greenlanders are going to choose through self-determination to become independent of Denmark, and then we're going to have conversations with the people of Greenland from there. So I think that talking about anything too far in the future is way too premature. We do not think that military force is ever going to be necessary. We think this makes sense. And because we think the people of Greenland are rational and good, we think we're going to be able to cut a deal, Donald Trump style, to ensure the security of this territory, but also the United States of America. Sometimes asking Greenland to get itself into terrible economic debt traps that would make the people of Greenland not self-determined and sovereign, but to mortgage their future to hostile foreign countries that don't have their best interests at heart. That is not what the United States of America wants to do. What we want to do is to protect the security of this territory because it matters for us and it matters for the people who live here.